I told myself I need to make another YouTube video because I feel empty inside. I need to do something productive and creative of some sort. So here I am. Blue melting on my face. I guess we're going to talk about neurotyping. I've been thinking about that a lot lately. Let's just call this what I'm about to talk about the aesthetics of neurotyping. Because I think it's possible to neurotype something like a work of art. And you can be like, how can that be? If neurotyping is, supposed to be a way to type people via like their thought process. But how can you neurotype a work of art? It's a work of art. It doesn't think, right? So there's got to be like an aesthetic to neurotyping itself for each of the axes, right? Oh my God, I have a killer headache suddenly. I need to get some water. Hold up. Okay. Jesus, my head. All right. So there's got to be aesthetic to neurotyping. So I was like, well, what is that? All right. So I think lateral to linear can basically just be summed up as lateral is complicated and linear is straightforward. Visually, you can make that distinction with complicated and straightforward art. Think of a complicated work of art. Show a complicated work of art, Roman. Show a, more basic work of art, I guess. Sure. And, that's kind of subjective. What does it mean to have a complicated or straightforward art? But I think, you can attempt, there's a thing you could do there. And I think with lexical to impressionist, it's something like on the lexical side, it's like ordered, more orderly, structured art. And on the impressionistic side, it's kind of like the artist doesn't know what they're doing on some level. Or the artist is trying to convey something. How do I say this? If lexical is orderly, what's on the other side of this scale? It's kind of something like non-obvious. Well, I guess there's a couple levels you can neurotype something on, right? Is it visually orderly, or is the idea trying to be conveyed orderly? I think those can both be lexical. But then visually, you can have something that's non-orderly, which is like, oh, that's impressionism. I guess technically not, though, because I feel like you can have something... well, let's just say for the sake of argument, you have something an impressionistic work of art could be something that's like non-orderly, or something that's like, I don't know what you'd say. It's like the artist themselves, the thing they're trying to convey is not structured. It's like the work of art is something that the person was like using to work out their thought. Okay, so if there's aesthetics to neurotyping, I was thinking like, I think it might be the case that that's kind of like what is actually happening in neurotyping. I feel like it's an aesthetic that you're typing yourself as. It's not necessarily the thought process. Well, imagine there's like a hierarchy, right? You're watching a TV show. There's a hierarchy of how to neurotype, of the level that you've neurotyped someone at. At the bottom, there's something like, what would you say? It's like it's purely aesthetic the way you've neurotyped them. It's like they're like the guy's a really neat, uptight person. Oh, that's lexical, and then the second level is how this person expresses themselves. Like it's the bottom level is like secondhand information and purely I just saw you with the vibes you give off. All right. The second level is like the way they express themselves in conversation and maybe however they express themselves. A lot of times that's talking, but it could be like maybe you're watching like an anime where there's like a tournament arc and this guy has a very specific way of doing his martial art or something. You know what I mean? And then the top level is like their actual thoughts, what they say they think, or what their inner monologue says. You can also kind of imagine this as a bullseye, where the outer ring is that aesthetic and secondhand information, the second ring's expression, and the center is them talking about what they literally think, or expressing what they literally think. Okay. And it was making me think, like, when the neurotyping was originally created, it's like these these definitions were given to the axes, but as immediately after those definitions were given, it was like, all right, and now just kind of vibe check yourself. Oh, okay. Well, if you vibe check something, you're kind of working off with an impression of the thing, and it's not like literal. It feels like neurotyping is inherently sort of impressionistic, because once you start getting lexical, it's like the thing falls apart. Or it's the fact that it was never fully lexically expressed, so everyone's filled in the gaps differently, so we can't agree on what the literal lexical terms for things are, because we've all had to make up our own. So I feel like for our shared definitions of lexicality and impressionism, they need to be pretty vague. Lexicality, impressionism, lateral, linear, they need to be somewhat vague, somewhat an impression, and room for wiggle room, because it's like we all have to have room to come to our own conclusions. That's how I feel. I feel like this all should be a vibe check, and I think we can agree on the vibe check. And a lot of times we get, confused on the specifics of how we came to that conclusion. But a lot of times I think we can agree on how to type some character or some person or something. We just might have different methods, which is funny. There's been a lot of times over the years where people will dig down to the core of what neurotyping is, and it's like, yeah, maybe, but I think we still could agree on how to type fucking Naruto, I think we might both agree that these are the same place. Yeah, it feels like a good place to stop. I have some other things to say, but maybe I'll save them for another video. See you later, neurons.